Fair warning, this is going to be different from what you'll normally find on this channel. This is the edited and streamlined version of a free question and answer discussion that we hosted on January 11th for our Discord communities and the r/copywriting subreddit. The point of this discussion was to give newbie copywriters all over the world some clarity about the state of copywriting in 2026. So we gathered up a panel of people who write copy every day, even if copywriting is not exactly their role. They range in experience from a newbie who got his first copywriting client at 17 to someone who's been writing words for money over the last quarter of a century. We tried our best to be as representative of as many different experiences, careers, and life paths as possible. We featured men and women, a range of ethnicities and nationalities, and copywriters who struggled to build their career from nothing. You will hear from pure direct response copywriters, brand strategists, agency owners, entrepreneurs, and freelancers. Many of them shared their path into this career, their strategies for getting clients, the trends they're seeing in 2026, and a whole lot more. Our goal here was to help alleviate concerns that people have, that you might have, as someone considering or pursuing a career in copywriting. We covered whether copywriting and digital marketing is oversaturated and whether it's still possible to get hired as a freelancer or even in-house. We discussed what portfolio pieces you need to get the best results. And of course, we reveal if it's still possible to make a lot of money writing copy in 2026. Spoiler, it is. And which roles are in demand right now. We also touched on the threat, or in my opinion, the lack of a threat that AI poses to copywriters, but only certain kinds of copywriters. Now, because we want this to be as accessible as possible, we have turned off monetization on this video. We have also removed CTAs from the description, except for ways to join the free Copywriting Collective Discord, where the owners make a point to do zero marketing or selling. Our goal was not to make any money from this. We want you to listen to this and, at a bare minimum, hear one idea, one piece of information, one bit of motivation that we shared that can help you make money. Just don't go in expecting to hear all the solutions to all your problems. Go in with the expectation that at some point you will hear something that gives you a clearer direction on your own path to success. Okay, enough preface. Let's open now with the cred reel of everyone on the panel, jump into the questions about the state of copywriting in 2026, and then discuss what you can do to grow in this career.
Hello, everybody. Hello. I'm Sean McIntyre. I have been writing content and copy for about the last, oh my God, now it's been 24 years. I switched over, after a brief stint as a college professor, after getting my second master's degree. I began writing sales copy and content for financial publishing firms. And then also around 2016, 2017, began, starting up a bunch of business with my business partner, Lindsay Huff. And that has allowed me to write copy for everything from eyebrow microblading to chocolate to scented candles, service businesses all around our local area, the whole kit and caboodle. Around 2020, late 2020, I started a small YouTube channel that you might be familiar with called Copy That, and then gradually brought on friends and partners into that business. We've been growing steadily ever since without ever, not even once, making a profit promise in one of our thumbnails. And I'm very proud of that. So that is, I'm also, I guess, the head moderator of our copywriting. So if you ever see like some schmuck with mod, like in the next to the name, it's me. It's literally me, probably on the toilet. So sorry.
I'm Alvar. It's actually pronounced more like Oliver, not like Alvar. But I'm the CEO and founder of Muutos Digital, SEO-focused marketing agency based in Finland. And over the last 3 years, I built the agency to more than 140 clients. But actually, I didn't start as an agency owner. I began with copywriting more than 5 years ago, and then actually slowly focused more on the SEO writing part and content writing, and worked in Malta with the casinos, big casinos, and some international projects, and morely in Finland right now.
My name is Rod Satterway. I currently work as a creative and brand strategist for a pretty large ad agency up in the Pacific Northwest. But I got my start, just like a lot of you guys, 5 years ago in copywriting. And you probably know me from Copy That along with Sean. But my journey with copy has been kind of all over the place and has taken me from doing a lot of direct response stuff online to speech writing in real life to translation to a ton of different spaces. And so um, I'm really excited to talk about what copywriting looks like right now, not just in the sense of like how you can, go really deep in a direct response career, but also all different ways and or all different opportunities that there are this year and in the coming years to sort of branch out and do some more unintuitive things that might be appealing to people who don't have quite as salesy of a mindset.
Hello, my name is Aaron. I am currently an employee at CopyThat, but 3 years ago, I started out like how a lot of you guys start, and I saw a YouTube video that's like how to make $10,000 in 30 days. And it was for social media marketing at the time. Eventually, I found Alex's 5-hour copywriting course on YouTube. And ever since I watched that, I did all of the tasks and all of the books I was supposed to read. Over 3 or so years, I hashed out a lot of projects, many of which were not very successful, but persistence and sticking to it finally and eventually got me to where I am today.
My name is Alex. I am a marketer, I think is how I've started describing myself because I can't be bothered to list everything. But for the sake of cred, I started out as a freelance copywriter, initially doing just content. If anyone remembers rev.com or uses rev.com, before they used AI, they used people to actually type out subtitles. That was one of my first copywriting jobs for like half a penny a word or whatever it was. And then did articles, blogs, finally got into sales copy, then found myself, as well as pitching sales copy, also pitching marketing strategy to local businesses and then to e-commerce stores and then to a ton of other businesses. So I've definitely worked for dozens of niches at this point, everything from industrial piping to hot tubs to dog food to sex toys to online selling to pharmacies, like anything you can think of, I've probably done. And now I own a marketing agency in the UK. I co-own an agency with Sean, Rod, and Kaylee. We run CopyThat, which is an online course brand, and we do a YouTube channel and stuff. I also have stakes in e-commerce companies. I sold my own e-commerce businesses. So the reason I'm giving such a long cred reel is because it all goes back to copywriting, and it all goes back to being able to understand persuasion in print and knowing how to write things that make people buy things. And it all started from being a freelance copywriter. So I quit my 9 to 5 while I was working part-time as a freelance copywriter. And now it's my full-time job, and it has been for the last 5 years, 6 years. And I think I started like 7, 8 years ago. So that is me.
Hi, I'm Kaylee. I'm a hairstylist turned mom of 3 turned general marketing guru. I don't know, not guru, but I basically was unemployed after COVID, doing a college degree, and then freelancing, I guess unemployed, freelancing graphic design. And then I kind of spun that into the career that I have now, where I am creative director for CopyThat and freelance marketer. So there you go.
Amazing.
Mhm.
And I'm Jonathan. So let's get started. Sean, if you were to restart from zero, you got no experience, you didn't have access to like Mark Ford and the Agora universe, all the stuff that you have in your tool belt right now. You're coming out of university, you're like, okay, I've got these degrees, I've been teaching, I don't really like what I'm doing right now. How would you try to transition into a career as a copywriter?
That's an interesting question. I would probably do it almost the exact same way that I did it 12 years ago, 13 years ago. I had already been writing content, blog content, other sorts of content as well for a fairly long time. And when I was ready to stop teaching, what I started doing was I started actually reaching out to people who were making requests. So, using the then version of Upwork, which was Craigslist. People were asking people for writing jobs on Craigslist. Basically, from there, I started applying for ghostwriting gigs. I wrote several books for business professors. I wrote several landing pages before I knew what a landing page was even called. And then what I did was I started applying for jobs in-house to leverage my talents there. as either a managing editor or copy editor, or proofreader. And then what I did when I was at these businesses was I went in through the side door. I started doing the job, but then also making efforts to get promoted and, do more and learn more from the other people that were there. So when I got a job, as a very entry level position at a financial publishing business, I just started, pitching spec articles, attending every single optional meeting that I possibly could, making friends with people that had the potential to help boost my career. And they did. So within 2 months, I was promoted. And within 13 months of getting hired at a financial publishing business, I was the head of a division. And so I would probably just follow the exact same path that I did because it's worked out really, really well for me. And so it's interesting because I took the freelance, then in-house, and now freelance again path. And I think that that's probably a good idea for a lot of people because what the freelance path initially did was give me not only experience, but also the ability to put together a portfolio that made getting an in-house job a lot easier. Then once I had an in-house job, I was literally paid to learn things, which makes the stress of this career a whole lot smaller. And then once I had a big network, once I had a lot of contacts, then it made getting another freelance career and even starting agencies a lot easier after that because all my employers I just turned into my clients.
Haley, I want to throw the same question your way because a lot of people could look at you and say, of course you're successful. You're married to Sean McIntyre, right? But obviously you've worked hard and you've done a lot of your own stuff independent of whatever opportunities being connected to Sean and Alex and Rod and all of those other people have given you. So if you were to start from zero, you have no network. All you have is the skill set that you've developed. You've got the design skill set. You've got the copy skill set. You've learned. Where do you go next?
I would just say immediately start putting yourself out there. It's hard to really quantify that and say directly where to go because I guess I stalled a lot. Okay, so this is something that people don't know. Being married to Sean is very intimidating, okay? So when you're trying to put yourself out there in the copy world and you're married to somebody that's like incredibly good at this and you have the wherewithal to know that you're not on that level yet, it's very, very intimidating to actually put your foot in the career. I think people just assume being married to someone really good makes it easy. It doesn't. It does not at all. And so I think for me, had I started out, I would have let go of that feeling sooner and then immediately just started putting myself out there and trusting myself a little bit more to be competent in this. And so, yeah, I would just immediately outreach a client that was in a niche that I really liked. Because I found that when I finally started working with a client with an interest that was something that I liked, it felt less stressful. So I think I would definitely outreach clients with or businesses that held something that I enjoyed, like in the fashion, beauty, skincare space, because I would have been less afraid to start writing for them. And I realized like, oh, I've been in that space for a long time because I was a hairstylist. So that would have made that transition a lot easier because I already understood the market instead of putting all this pressure on myself. Yeah. So that's what I would say.
Okay, so you got that experience, you had a career before.
Mm-hmm.
You find these brands, would it be e-com, would it be services? How do you start looking for them?
Just online, honestly, networking. So, for instance, I just outreached a company the other day where I was just scrolling Facebook, and because the algorithm puts fashion businesses in my feed because I'm often online looking at clothes and what have you, I noticed their funnel was up. And so sorry if I cuss, but I just messaged them and I said, you know what? Like, hey, I noticed this issue. I clicked this ad and it's taking me to a page that's unrelated to the ad. And in my experience, this causes conversions to drop and sales to drop. But although if it's working for you, I'd love to know. Like, please tell me if I'm wrong. And then immediately they were like, hey, let's talk. And so really just seeing things in the wild and then acting on them when you see them. I am not the person that is like, I'm going to be systematic about this and I if it's there, I see it, I notice it, then I just reach out and say something. That's the best advice that I can tell you. And if you use Google, you can look into businesses and that are within the niche that you are interested in, and you can find those yourself. Those errors in the funnels. You can go on Facebook or Meta Ad Library and look at what's there and think about the skill sets that you already have, that if you already have those skill sets built up and you already have a knowledge, it makes it easier to sell yourself to that client because you have that. And so that's what I would say. Pick something you really like, study it, even if it's just a baseline level of knowledge, so that you can come off like you know what you're talking about. And then when you're speaking with whoever you're trying to prospect, that you are automatically more authentic because you genuinely like what you're trying to pitch.
That makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
Aaron, someone like you have no real world experience. So so you're early 20s, let's say late teens when you started. You can't just go to a place and say, "Hey, I've worked in restaurants for 10 years," or "I've been a hairstylist for 15 years," or "I've had a history of writing and rhetoric and I'm a professor." So how would someone like you go if you have zero experience? How would you go get your first clients?
Well, I actually did come from zero experience. I was 16 or 17, and I did get my first client. So I think there's not really a secret or trick to it, but piggybacking off of what Kaylee and Sean said, I think it's the easiest if you first actually study and get good at copywriting. There's a lot of training videos out there. No, I would like to recommend one. It's Copy That's 22-hour mega course, which is free. But point being is, however you want to get there, get a base level of copywriting that's where you are confident that you can put something out that is okay. It doesn't have to be good. It just needs to be okay. And then find something you're interested in. Let's say you're into weightlifting, right? Reach out to gyms near you. If you like League of Legends, you can reach out to League of Legends coaches or whatever your hobby is. There's probably a business based on that hobby. And I would recommend starting there because, for one, right, it helps you understand what people which are looking out for since you are one of the customers yourself. And I would draft up a spec piece, just like what Kaylee and Sean said, and I would pitch it to those businesses. And I think that's your easiest way to get your foot in the door. And I think everything becomes easier once that happens.
Rod and Alvar, you guys have taken less traditional copywriting paths. Rod, now you're a strategist, but you said before when you were giving your intro, you've done a ton of stuff from translation to political. Alvar, you're more focused on SEO. You do a little bit of business optimization as well. So we'll start with Rod. If you were to try to get a position like you have now, like strategy, what would you do? Because you can't just reach out to somebody and be like, "Hey, I can rewrite your landing page for you," if you're trying to be a strategist for your career, right?
hmm Yeah, for sure. And actually, I would start by piggybacking off of what Aaron was saying and reaching out to people kind of in areas that interest you or that you have a little bit of knowledge on. But particularly, I would reach out to other people who are still trying to figure things out like you are. Obviously, when you get started for the first time, you don't really know what you're doing. And so if you go and you approach someone who has a thriving business and it's clear that you don't know what you're doing, there's going to be a lot less patience for you and your skills where they are. However, if you reach out to people like, up and coming League of Legends coaches or content creators or people who have a small business but haven't really done a lot of marketing before, if you approach them, develop some sort of rapport and say like, hey, I have some ideas for this. Would you be willing to try them? One, they'll be a little bit more willing to try some weirder stuff to be patient with you as you figure stuff out. But two, I think it's a little bit easier to get your foot in the door with them in terms of relationship building as well, because they're not going to have quite as high expectations as somebody who has done this or worked with a ton of copywriters or marketers before. In terms of getting into like where I am now, I do think that a lot of positions, and this is just as true for copywriting, benefit from people who have a breadth of experience, not just that very deep vertical experience. And so I would do a bunch of different things. If you want to be able to have a take on sports and financial stuff and e-com and beauty supply stuff, you have to actually have experience in those things. And so before worrying about getting into that specific job up here, I'd say, how can I build a foundation of knowledge across a wide range of areas that, regardless of what I'm tasked with, are going to allow me to be the person who shows up and has an interesting take on those things. This is just as true for copywriting as well, but I think it's much less important what you can do and more like your ability to think about things and show up with something that's going to shock and surprise people. Yeah.
Great answer. And for Alvar, does someone need to fly to a sketchy region within the European Union to make connections to be able to start an SEO agency, or what's the first step?
Well, I actually liked Rod's answer a lot. Honestly, when I started out, I was working at this very sketchy agency. Was just starting out, and we got our first clients with cold calling and just walking into businesses and pitching them. Like, that's it. And honestly, if I would do this again in 2026, I wouldn't chase some SEO guru title or start a personal brand in LinkedIn or something, or try to know every single tool out there. I kind of just pick one niche or type of business and just get really good at knowing them and helping them grow with like organic traffic or content writing. How I would get clients is I'd talk to real companies again, call them, meet them, like genuine human conversations with them, and try to understand what's actually broken in their business model. And it's not about just rankings or Google traffic, but leads, sales, and whether their traffic is actually doing anything useful. In 2026, I'd actually use a lot of AI to get behind the scenes idea of the business model and what's moving the needle, what's creating profit. And yeah, just getting to know the business model, getting to know the niche, the vertical, and working with that, and actually trying to build some human connections with real people, not just putting out AI slop outreach or stuff like that.
Yeah. So I like that answer a lot. One hesitation that I would have if I were someone who's just starting, I'm like, well, based on what you said, what Rod said, what Kaylee said, it sounds like you need to know a lot before you can get started. I need to be able to diagnose a business. I need to understand what the real problems are. I need to be able to produce the content or the copy, video, thumbnail, like whatever I'm doing. It's going to take me a long time to get to a point where I can confidently do that and say, I can promise you these results, right? So how would you circumvent that and give yourself the opportunity to get started, even if you just have a little bit of experience or if you're still learning?
I'd honestly recommend trying to get a job at a real business, like in-house marketing or something like that. But it has helped me a lot. I worked at a e-commerce shop selling light fixtures and lighting for about 9 months before I started my work at this sketchy agency. And then after I worked at the sketchy agency for a year, I started my own agency. So yeah, I think real world knowledge and real world job experience is kind of crucial.
I think so as well. And we can see that reflected in Sean's story. We can see that reflected in Rod's story. Aaron's on his way there. And personally for me, in the last 2 years while I was the director of the agency, I learned so much more being in-house because you have access to a lot of really smart people. You have access to a lot more data. You don't have to struggle with like the sales and the marketing and doing all of those things yourself. You can really just focus on doing the marketing for the businesses that you're working for. And I think that's a huge opportunity that a lot of people overlook because they see Iman or they see Hormozy or they see whoever else, and they're like, hey, you can make $1 billion doing no work. Just go and be a business owner, right? But that is so hard. I would say nearly impossible for most people to go from zero to making any kind of money. You're going to burn yourself out. You're going to start hating it, right? Like there's a lot involved in owning a business, and there's so much to learn versus going in-house. I think, just to piggyback of what everyone else said, you're going to get a lot more opportunity that way. So to get a job in-house, Sean was saying he transitioned from freelance to working in-house that let him build a portfolio. And a question that we get a lot from people who are just starting is what kind of portfolio do I need? How many pieces do I need in my portfolio? Should I be building my portfolio to be niche specific or do I do something broad? Am I sending these in job applications? Like, do I send it in the first email? Sean, can you tell me more a little bit about the theory of portfolio and then what you would suggest for somebody going into 2026? What should they have in their portfolio for the types of jobs they're looking for?
Well, the first thing you got to know, that everybody has to know when they get into this, is that portfolio means a different thing to different people. Rod knows this for a fact, but a creative's or a creative designer's portfolio is going to look vastly different from, a direct response email copywriter or specialist, what their portfolio is going to look like. So, I'll let Rod speak about things on the creative agency side and what that sort of portfolio kind of looks like. I do know that many creatives will often like mock up like fake ads that they'll do on spec or, for brands, and then write copy on things that they either design themselves or hire other designers for. There are whole businesses built around this. Portfolio School, if any of you want to like look into that world, Portfolio School exists, and it exists to help people, you guessed it, build a portfolio and have it ready to send out to people. On the direct response and freelance side, things look a little different. And you have to keep in mind that if you send a direct response targeted and specialized portfolio to a brand creative director's desk, people will just flat out laugh at you and make fun of you and say that they hope bad things happen to you. But if you send a direct response oriented portfolio to a business that specializes in direct response, that looks way different. And so what does that look like? That can be as simple as attaching documents like Word documents or Google documents to an email on request. That can also be having an Upwork profile where you actually do upload some things to Upwork specifically that allow you to actually highlight the things that you've done before. What we often recommend is assembling a Google Drive that's nicely organized and then also has videos of you specifically talking about and introducing the pieces that you have in your portfolio, such that not only do you have the pieces in your portfolio, but you also appear on camera in front of others so that you look like a real person. That's a big objection that a lot of people have right now to hiring freelancers online, which is like, are you a real person? Can you speak fluent English? Like, are you going to be okay to work with? There's a lot of distrust right now. And like a good direct response copywriter, you have to figure out ways to overcome those objections. Alex, for example, has a very specific good approach that I'm a huge fan of, which is creating effectively video audits for business. And so your portfolio sort of straddles like not only, hey, here's an example of stuff that I've done, but also here's specifically what's going on with your business that I can help with. He has a bunch of material on that. I'm trying not to be pitchy in this particular call. This is just free value, but if he wants to be pitchy, he can.
Yeah, go to copythatshow.com and buy our courses.
And so just to answer that question as unfortunately non-succinctly as possible, I suppose, the thing that I always recommend is this. Either like the first thing you got to understand is whom you're sending stuff to and what their expectations are. Because if you, like with any sort of direct response copy, send the wrong thing to the wrong people in the right frame of mind at the wrong time, your copy is not going to work. Same is true for outreach. Outreach is the same as copy. Applying to jobs is the same as copy. It's just stuff that sells you. You are the product in this case. And if you're like, I take umbrage with being treated like a product, well, welcome to capitalism. You're not going to escape it. Deal. What I would suggest is, especially if you're going for different businesses, like long form direct response businesses, write a spec piece or a part of a piece of copy on spec and send it to them. A video audit is not going to work for like an Agora company, for example. They're not interested. They don't want to hear your stinky video audit. Get it out of my face. But if you have a lead for a really killer sales letter idea, they are always hungry for long form direct response financial sales letters. And there's plenty of business like that. Gundry, Golden Hippo, and Health. Insert name of survival business here. Like there's plenty of niches that where writing a spec piece and then sending it in is going to work best. And that's worked for me for email. That's worked for me for PPC. That's worked for me for all sorts of businesses.
Very like baseline. You have to be able to show that you can do the job. Can you I guess for most people here, it's could you write an email? But for us, it's more, can you write a script for a video that might play on social or on TV? Can you write a script for each of those different settings? Because those look like different things. Do you have an ability to write lines that could appear in out of home or billboard settings or stuff like that? But that's quite honestly the baseline. And in the same way that like just being able to literally write an email is not sufficient, the next step is being able to demonstrate like higher level conceptual thinking. And so it's not just can you write this, but can you write this in the context of something that's like much bigger than this? Can you piece together a campaign from one singular idea? So going from one script or one email to, well, here's how all these things would flow together, and here's how the sum becomes greater than its parts. And so when I have looked at people's portfolios, when I am talking to creatives about how they're thinking about a campaign, yeah, it's great if you have like a cute line or you could put some like pretty words together. But the thing that gets me really excited is when someone can say, hey, actually, this is the idea I have, and here's why it's relevant to this business, and here's why it's going to resonate with the audience. But two, here's how we can take this small thing and have it blow up across a whole bunch of other different things to create like a much bigger experience for people.
That's fantastic. So what the big thing that I'm getting hearing your answer and hearing Sean's answer is that it's very contextual, right? You're not going to reach out to a creative agency the same way you're going to reach out to a big publisher, the same way you're going to reach out to a DR agency, the same way that you're going to reach out to a freelance client. So there are a lot of different strategies. And I think that one of the main takeaways for everybody who's watching this should be that it doesn't matter what the channel is. What matters is how relevant you are, right? Understanding what they're looking for and how they're looking for it. Because there are things that are normal in a corporate setting, right? And you have to abide by those rules. If you come in and you do something that they're not used to, it could be the best direct response headline, whatever, in your pitch, but who cares? Because they're going to be like, oh, this guy's weird. And they're going to immediately disqualify you if they're expecting you to fill in an application, right? So understand who you're reaching out to and what is the norm that they're looking for, and then apply yourself to do the best that you can within that standard. And I think that's going to give you a huge advantage. Before we move on, though, one thing that I want to mention, because I was hiring a lot with the agency, it was more of a corporate setting. People would go on and fill in their application, whatever. The biggest thing that I noticed is that there are so many people who are using AI to do their applications now, right? So I want to warn you to not do that, because what I saw over and over and over again was that people, my assumption is people would just copy the application, all the questions, paste it into ChatGPT and say, hey, write the answers for me, right? And then they would use those. And so the number of calls that I got on where I was just so mad and felt like my time was wasted because my first question, have you ever worked in info marketing before? And people would be like, of course I've worked in info marketing before. I've done all these projects. And then I'd get on, I'd challenge them, and I'd see it's a lie, right? All the way down to the last question, which is, please provide a loom walking me through a campaign that you've done, da da da. And the ChatGPT asked response is, while I cannot provide a loom, comma, ellipsis. I'm like, what the like, imagine seeing that same answer over and over again for hundreds of applications. So don't use ChatGPT, do your best, and then work within the context of the corporate setting or the freelance client or the publisher or the creative agency. Whatever you're going to do, understand what's normal and do that. Now, Alvar, you own an agency, you're hiring people a lot. One thing that we were talking about, you and I in DMs recently, was you got some people who you hire and very quickly you realize that they're not the right fit. But then being a nice person and wanting to train them and wanting to give them a chance, you sink a lot of time and a lot of money into them. And maybe a year goes by and you look back and you're like, I just wasted a year of my life and I just wasted a year of a salary. And there's a lot of there are a lot of negative emotions that can come up for you as the business owner when you put yourself in that situation and you become jaded and it really hurts you, but it also hurts the perception that you have of the people who are applying and of the newbies. So I would like to ask you, in a hiring context like that, what is it that you're looking for in an application or in a conversation that you're having with someone that's going to make you lean towards like this is the right person and it's not going to be a waste of my time and my money to invest in them?
Yeah, I'm actually real scared of hiring anybody right now. just because of Finland's really strict employment laws and kind of socialist, you cannot fire people if you wanted to laws. But it's more of that I made the mistake of hiring the wrong person 3 times now. One guy was an alcoholic, and it wasn't his fault. He's an okay guy, and 2 guys just weren't good cultural fits. So I want to get a more emphasis on the cultural fit part. You really need to like have people you can trust and who you vibe with. Vibes, they are really important in my experience, because you can enforce stuff in your agency or in your workplace. You can make rules. You can have micromanagement style leadership, but you cannot really like force vibes. And it's important that the people working in your agency have this similar mindset. They get along really well. And yeah, actually, I wanted to make a point about your ChatGPT application point. And it's really funny because I have hired maybe 15 or 18 freelancers, and I have looked at around 250 applications in the past year. And what you said is spot on. There's really a bunch of people who don't really give a shit about their applications and just copy paste the question from ChatGPT or Claude into the emails. And because of that, I think a lot of agencies, including us, we kind of use these honey traps right now to spot the obvious AI applications. And I would want everybody here to like be cautious of this, because you're going to get caught using just AI in your applications. And please don't do that. It's not nice.
Before we move off of hiring, Sean, were you the one who decided to hire Aaron, or was it through Alex or through Rod primarily?
It was Alex, as a matter of fact.
Oh, okay, cool. Perfect. So, Alex, then this question will be directed at you. What is it about Aaron that made you want to hire him?
One of the things I always talk about, I don't know how many times I've said this in different videos, but persistence and curiosity are such massive pieces of like getting jobs. And persistence, if you're a freelancer, is to continue to reach out and to not be put off by rejection. Persistence in-house, when you're networking and you're looking for opportunities, and in Aaron's case, he was almost always the first person to volunteer to like do a piece of work that we were looking for one of our incubators. Okay, so some background context then. So Aaron joined one of CopyThat's like high ticket programs, to learn more about copy and to be kind of coached by us directly. And in that, we also put out jobs and we ask people to do work for us, and we pay them for that work. And it didn't matter what went out. It didn't matter if it was like a pharmacy article page. It didn't matter if it was something to do with BizOp. It didn't matter if it was something for our own newsletter. Aaron was always like, let me do it, like, hey, I want to go at this, or how would you guys feel if I had a crack at this, or I know I'm already doing this thing, but can I also have a go at this? And he was constantly like asking me questions, and I imagine the same for Sean, same for Rod, like always seeing his name pop up again and again. And as Alvar mentioned, like, vibes and finding the right person, that persistence of wanting to work is a massive green flag. So that was a big reason we hired Aaron. And notice I didn't talk about skill. Aaron sucks. So like he doesn't, obviously. But we had a lot of skilled people, in these programs, and we know a lot of skilled people in the community. And Aaron, don't get me wrong, Aaron is of course a great copywriter, but it was that knowledge that I knew that if we brought him on and asked him to do something, he wouldn't stop until it was done the right way. And that counts for so much. And even if you're watching this and I want to be a freelancer, that counts just as much when you're reaching out to regular businesses and businesses who don't have high-tech programs going, and businesses who aren't like actively looking for people. If you're always showing them that you're willing to do the research, to spend the time to talk to them personally, to not use AI in your application, it goes such a long way. Like for me, my hiring process, and I've done this for the last 3 or 4 years, like I will always put funnily enough, this is the inspiration behind it. I always put in my job post, please attach a separate cover letter and put the words grey water bottle at the top of the cover letter. I put that at the very bottom of the application. So anyone who doesn't do that, I don't even look at the application, because I'm like, well, you haven't read the application and done the first thing that I've told you, or done the thing I've asked you to do. So just showing people you actually care in some way, whether you've got that opportunity, whether you're networking or whether you're reaching out, it goes such a long way to hiring. So that was a big reason that we wanted to hire Aaron.
I love that. One other thing for me, if I'm talking to a copywriter or like whoever in a marketing role, and they tell me that they have followed the same kind of processes that I've followed, learned from the same people that I've learned from, then I feel like for me that creates a little bit of trust. Where if, let's say, Aaron came to me and was like, oh, I love copy that, and that's how I learned copywriting, then I know Aaron knows how to do research. He understands the importance of a lead. He knows how to structure a sales letter, right? Like there are all of these other benefits. So just these little things that you can mention in your application or in the conversation you're having with a person who's hiring, those might work in your favor and be the thing that tips it towards you versus another applicant. Kaylee, I want to go to you now. So you, again, married to the great Sean McIntyre. But I wanted to ask you about networking, because I think that all of us can agree that the ways that we've gotten the way that we've gotten our best roles, all of that's always been through the network, right? What are some steps that you actively take to build your network or to create connections in the marketing space to give yourself more opportunities?
Okay, so number one, you can look up networking events in your area, and that's something that I've literally done. Yeah, Eventbrite or Meetup, you can go and search networking near me, and you can meet people through that. Also, if you are in college, something that you can do is join extracurriculars. So when I was in community college, one of the extracurriculars I was on was a podcast. And so I became a member of that, and I was able to meet people through there that were into the podcasting space. And through that, I got to meet some marketers, because there was partnerships with some people in marketing agencies coming in to teach seminars. So being involved in the extracurriculars in your education outside of just the classes you're taking, there's so many ways to skin that cat. Really, it's just putting yourself out there, having the bravery to put yourself out there and just speaking to people, right? If this is something that you really love, and this is something that I mastered when I was a hairstylist, because it's the same as in hairstyling as it is in marketing. When you're going to meet people, you have to put yourself out there. And the only way you do that is by speaking to people. And you make what you're doing the love of your life, basically. And so, for instance, when I was at friends' parties, or I was out at galas or what have you, I would just put myself out there. Say, oh, hey, I do this. Or if the conversation arose, oh yeah, and I had a Instagram that was just full of hair that I had done, and because I genuinely loved what I was doing. If it naturally came up, like, oh, if someone was talking about their hair, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm actually a hairstylist, and then they would ask me more. I wouldn't like, try to push my stuff on them. It would naturally happen in conversation. I'd be like, oh yeah, check it out. This is what I do. And that was something that I did everywhere. Or for instance, when Pokemon Go was a craze, right? I walked around with business cards, and I went to Pokestops with my business cards, knowing that there was going to be people there. And I didn't really have a format of, I'm going to pick these specific avenues. I just went, okay, how can I meet strangers? How can I get to know them? Because you never know who might be the person that needs you, or who you might be able to help. And you can't really go out there going, okay, I'm going to find these specific things. You just kind of, for me, it's just my lived experience. And I know, okay. And then through that, I just care about the work that I do. And I ultimately continue try to get better. And even when it feels horrible and scary and I flop on things, I use those experiences to teach me what I'm not going to do in the future. And then I just keep at it. And then through that, you'll get referrals, because your work will improve and people will be like, oh my God, I love working with you. And then through that, people will be referring the people that they know to you because they appreciated the work. Or if you have people that you know and that's another way that you can improve your work, is if you see work around you that you know that you could do better, you reach out to the person you know and go, okay. And you can even do a loss leader and do something for free for somebody in the hopes that they'll want to work with you again in the future. There's so many ways to go about it that you just have to have the bravery to put yourself out there. And as long as you keep putting yourself out there and you keep trying to get better at what you're doing, you keep trying to actively learn, it will come to you. It is exponential, in my opinion. So the more that you keep doing something, the more you're going to see it benefit you. And it might take a little bit in the beginning and it might feel really scary, but you got to just kind of dip through those scary ass feelings and just do it. And that's the best answer that I can give you.
That was a fantastic answer. Follow up for you. Were you always a person who was able to have conversations easily, or did you have to work on that? And if you did, what were the steps that you took to become outgoing like you are now?
No, I was not. And even now, I'll feel internally like, am I saying things right? Did that come out okay? What do I say in this moment? I have ADHD, and so like keeping focused, especially in social settings, was always really challenging for me. And being a hairstylist, I was kind of forced how to talk to people. I actually got a book. It's called Conversation Starters. So I remember talking to my boss at the time, the crippling anxiety I had about how do I keep a conversation going. And like even with my current friends, they would be like, "Oh, you seem fine," but I would still feel in my head about it. And so it was just something that I just forced myself to do it. I forced the discomfort basically and acted like I wasn't uncomfortable, even though internally I felt like I was dying inside. A big tip that was given to me was ask people questions about them. Don't have I-centered conversations. Just, oh, tell me about what you do, and then listen to what they say, and then ask questions about what they just said. It just naturally keeps a conversation going, and it makes them feel good because it makes you seem interested in them. And if it's something that make it easier to talk to people, if you find groups like board game nights. And I know all this seems unrelated to business sense, but a lot of times your greatest connections are the ones where you build rapport with people, and real rapport, not just you trying to get something out of them. Like when I went out and I was doing the hair and pushing myself, I wasn't generally just like, I need money and I just want to make money. No, like I also wanted to make friends. I didn't want to be lonely. And so you have to genuinely build those relationships, and not like build relationships based off of using people, but building relationships because you genuinely like the person. And so that's what I would say to that. Yeah.
That's amazing. We'll take that. We'll keep the same kind of question, pivot over to Aaron. So, Aaron, you probably haven't gone to a bunch of networking events. You probably haven't had the opportunity to go meet a bunch of people in real life, but you still have a really good copywriting career. What suggestions would you give people for networking specifically online? Because there are a lot of people who could live in like non-American countries or non-European countries. They don't have access to these kinds of opportunities. All they have is a Discord server or Reddit or like Facebook groups or whatever. What would you suggest those people do?
I say this half in jest, but it's to not touch grass. So what I mean by that is, actually, I am currently in one of the best business schools in America, best business colleges for marketing. And what I've noticed is that as I've actually been going to the in-person events, I don't really get a chance to meet a lot of people who do copywriting or even know what copywriting is. And something I've kind of realized that over the years is that what we do, this kind of craft is very, very niche. And I think that an advantage that we have in this generation that the older people didn't have is we have this thing called Discord, or in other words, communities. I have spent a lot of time, mostly because I'm an introvert, but I've spent a lot of time on Discord, just making friends with people who do copywriting and talking to a lot of people. Over 2 or 3 years, I've made friends with a lot of people, and those friends that I made have led to opportunities, not because I was trying to look for them. They just kind of happened to be there for me because I knew the right people at the right time.
So if you're in person, expose yourself to as many people as possible. Go just talk to people, have conversations, learn to be a good conversationalist. If you're stuck doing it online, exact same strategies apply, right? It's just a matter of volume, I think, more than anything else. And I think we all agree to that. Because the more people you know, the more opportunities you'll create for yourself. And then, like Kaylee said, it kind of cascades from there, Where if I do a good job for Sean, then Sean's going to say, oh, well, Kaylee, you're looking for a copywriter. You know, John did a really good job for me. Why don't you work with John? And then Kaylee gets the good work and she's like, oh, Rod, you should really work with Jonathan, right? And so you kind of build that snowball and eventually you hit a critical mass where now you don't need to ask anybody for work. You have too much work. Now you're turning people away. Speaking specifically about networking and creating opportunities for yourself, could you just, this isn't a question, but speak on how when you're at the top, right? Like you're a really big name, recognized, and you have a really good network of people around you, you're always kind of looking for people to do work for you, right? And the pool of talent that you have access to is really small. So can you just help people understand that dynamic and how really once they get that first opportunity, if they do a really good job, then they could potentially have unlimited new work coming their way?
That's difficult because that's such a case by case thing. And like, for example, I wouldn't consider myself like at the top. I'm definitely like high, intermediate, low top. And that's a function of just like having businesses that I hire for, knowing the people that I know. Um, but when it comes to the people that I know that are indeed at the top, that have ascended to Guru Mountain, I guess it would be, a lot of them still go to events. And I was talking to Mark Ford and Rich Schefren about this relatively recently, but they were speaking about networking where the one thing that you don't want to do with somebody like that is to give them your card. You, when you go to these events, should be trying to get their card. And what you do in these situations when you're talking to people at that particular level, a lot of what you're doing is really trying to appeal to them and endear yourself to them more on a personal level. As we've discussed before, a lot of it is very vibes based. Like you're not going to cold outreach Mark Ford. You're not going to cold outreach Rich Schefren or people at that level. Um, Gurus to the gurus types of folks. But when they do happen to appear in public, like at a paid event or something like that, it's perfectly acceptable to go up and start a conversation and to talk about ideally the things that they like. Your classic Dale Carnegie, how to win friends and influence people kind of stuff. And if you get an in, like, hey, email me, or hey, email my secretary, or what have you, that's your opportunity to really shine because more often than not, you won't be doing work for them. They're not actively running any businesses anymore. They will introduce you via email to other people in their network. And then you want to do a good job for them. And that is what typically happens. That's how you start growing in that particular way through that particular medium. The problem with that, though, is it's so irreplicable. You know what I mean? There's no system for it. There's no formula. A lot of it is luck based, who is where and at what time and when. And so my advice to people, generally speaking, is to just practice these skills that, like, for example, Kaylee was talking about. And so that you have a baseline of competency when it comes to interacting with people, in the meat space, as it were. That way, when you do have an opportunity to make luck swing your way, you can. Jonathan, does that effectively answer your question? I tried to carve out as much nuance there as I could.
No, 100%. And to me, the big lesson is it is luck. It's not replicable, but you can have more opportunity, right? So meeting more people does give you more opportunity like this. There's nothing that Sean could say, like there's no 1, 2, 3 step. This is going to get you jobs with high level people, but exposure, having conversations, being a good vibes, friendly, like good worker, all of those things contribute to it. And that's how you're eventually going to get yourself to a place where you're able to get these high level jobs. But now, on the back of that, let's say I'm a new copywriter. I don't have a ton of experience. I don't have a ton of knowledge. How do I know when I'm good enough to start doing this? I'll throw this one over to Rod because he hasn't spoken in a while. So, Rod, we'll say in the context of, let's say you're hiring for the copy that agency that you guys have, or you're hiring for a creative role, like whatever it is, how do I get over that fear that I have or that anxiety and be like, okay, I'm finally ready to start putting myself out there?
So I'm actually a bad person to ask about this because I am not a very anxious person. Um, and the reality is that from what I've heard from a lot of anxious people in my life is that it never goes away. And
Mhm.
so it's not a matter of getting over your anxiety, getting over your fear. It's a matter of just doing it. And until you are willing to put yourself in a position in which you are uncomfortable, um, you will not be able to grow. And that applies just as much to copy as it does to anything in life. If you're only doing things that you know you're gonna succeed at, like you're gonna grow much more slowly, or you're just not gonna grow at all relative to people who are willing to go out there and like get some scrapes and bruises and understand that we are humans who are resilient who will eventually heal unless we lose appendages. Um, so like, yes, don't go out there and walk up to someone like Mark Ford or Jeff Bezos and be like, hey, let me be your CFO. But do say, hey, like, I kind of have an idea. What do you think about it? And understand that it's okay if they say, hey, I'm not really interested, or hey, this isn't a great fit for what I'm doing. Because, you know, if you are inexperienced and if you do not have the skill to do something, it is not a bad thing if someone tells you so. I think in terms of hiring for our businesses, or even when I talk to a lot of interns or people who are trying to become interns in my company, and it is not the expectation. I think this is fair to say. It is not the expectation when you hire someone that they're going to be perfect, that they're going to be perfectly ready for the role into which you're hiring them. Obviously, you want them to be able to do a certain number of things so they're not useless. But even when you're hiring someone for a pretty high level role, there's an understanding that it's going to take them 6 months or longer to be fully acclimated in that role and be fully self-sufficient, given how much institutional knowledge they're going to need to acquire, given how much they're going to need to learn about the business itself and the people who are running it and how things work within that individual company. So it is less about being the perfect employee and more about being someone who is coachable, being someone who is open to feedback and can receive it gracefully. Um, and so when I think about that, and I think about if I were to apply to a new role, that takes a lot of pressure off of you. Um, all you have to be is somebody who is somewhat competent, who is open and willing and eager to learn about the thing that they're going to do. And if you can be that person and you think you can be that person for long enough to get good, I think your chances of sticking around at a place are actually pretty high.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. I've always told people you just have to be good enough, give your work on time, and not cause problems, right?
Yeah.
That's what's going to get you hired.
The answer to the anxiety is action. So in the beginning, you're not going to feel very good because you don't know what you're doing. And again, that is okay. Nobody does. And you have to be okay with trying anyway and being okay with failure and then continuing on throughout the failure. And as long as you're persistent and you have drive, then you're going to be okay. Because every failure is something that you can learn from. And so the more that you learn from your mistakes, the more competent you feel, and you will start to know that you're getting better because people will tell you and the numbers will show you. And you can learn through the metrics, through the numbers, through the education. And you will start to pick up and learn about what is good through the act of trying to learn it. And that's the only way you'll start to know that you're getting better at something. And so you just have to do it. You just have to do it and apply and try, even if you feel you're unqualified, and be honest about where you are. That authenticity helps you ultimately. So, hey, I am I want to get into copywriting. I've watched the 22-hour mega course. I've learned all the basics and I really would like a shot at this and put yourself in entry-level roles. Find people. Again, this is where building relationships helps because if you're being genuine with them and you've built that relationship prior to trying to build this thing, they can also help get your foot in the door. And so it's just making that your life and being okay with eating dirt in the beginning and forcing yourself through those uncomfortable feelings and just doing it. That's what I can say.
Beautiful. Thank you very
Mhm.
much for that take. I think that a
Mhm.
lot of people will appreciate that.
Mm.
We're going to shift a little bit because a lot of the questions so far have been like, I'm starting, how do I get my first job? Things like that. But there are a lot of questions that we got as well related to how I can develop myself, right? Like as a copywriter who is, we'll say like beginner, early intermediate, how do I become better? And in chat, we're talking a lot about the idea of the D-shaped marketer. But let's but let's say you do want to develop yourself as a marketer, right? Obviously, all of us here started, I guess, not Kaylee, not Alvar, but all the rest of us here, we started as like pure copywriters, right? We just sat down and we wrote words. And we've grown our skill set to now include much more than that. Kaylee and Alvar, they started from somewhere else. Now they added in copywriting to that skill set. And we've all become a lot more valuable the more we learn. If you're just someone who can go to a business and you say, I write your emails for you, the business maybe pays you $2,000 a month. You write the emails, they get somebody else to design them, they get somebody else to set up the tech, you're good. If you can come to a business instead and say, hey, I'll take care of your entire email marketing strategy, and then I will write the emails, and then I will design the emails, and then I will set them up inside of Klaviyo, and then I'll send them to the right people, and then I'll look at the data and I'll analyze it and I'll optimize them. You can do all of these things. The business goes from paying you $2,000 a month to now paying you maybe $10,000 a month. And for them, it's a good deal because they're paying one guy $10,000 instead of paying 7 people $2,000. And the one guy can take full ownership and he can get to know the business better and he can do much better work than if it's divided amongst a bunch of people. So if you were to start as a copywriter, Alex Myatt, you have done nothing except for write ads, write emails, and write landing pages. What are the first skills that you stack? And when do you say, okay, this is enough of learning this new skill, on to the next one? How do you go through that learning process and that development for yourself?
I think to a degree it's personal preference. Like there's not one right avenue to take. For example, I know copywriters who have picked up design or were already kind of interested in design, and then they started putting together like full web pages for people, and they just became a person who made websites for small businesses. I know that route worked. My route was I started to take on marketing strategy. So I didn't just look at the words we were writing, but I looked at how can I control the assets with outside of the words or on either side of the words. So like when do emails get sent? What kinds of emails are getting sent in a certain sequence? What pages live next to each other? Are we using paid ads or are we focusing on organic or whatever? So marketing strategy is a big one. Marketing strategy, I think, can seem like a behemoth of a topic, but really all it is working out the most frictionless way to move a prospect from here, either not knowing about the business or kind of knowing about the business to having bought from that business or having bought again from that business. And when you start thinking about it like that, it becomes a lot less scary. You know, people like to throw words like SEO and GEO and, you know, all these different marketing terms around. But ultimately, that's what it is. How can you get someone from here to there? Just think about it like that. It becomes a lot more simple.
I think one of the big points is that there are multiple skill sets, right? It doesn't matter what you learn. No matter what you learn, you'll become more valuable.
If we want to be topical about this and talk about 2026, the best thing to learn or to understand, I would say, is probably creative strategy, because it's such a hot like topic with so many businesses right now, and I think it will continue to be for the next few years. It's only a term that really has started to gain traction the last like year or two, you know, among business owners who I know, but now they're all obsessed with like, oh my god, we have to get a creative strategist in. We need someone who knows creative strategy. Creative strategy, I'm not going to go into it too much, but basically it's just creating video and image ads on platforms like Meta, so Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, the scripts, the visuals, and then the media buying around those things. So how you build the campaigns, where they're placed, who they're targeted towards. So creative strategy seems to be something that, you know, like SEO was 10 years ago, and of course still is for the right businesses. No offense, Alva. Alva's gone. Good. But creative strategy is kind of becoming that now. The thing I was going to say was the best way you can possibly learn any skills is by doing something yourself. I know it almost sounds cliche at this point, but honestly, I learned so much more having access to a Google Ads account and just trying to make something work than reading all kinds of books and content and courses about it. And it doesn't matter if you don't have access to a big business's Google Ads account, like for Christ's sake, just talk to someone you know who has like a small business, a friend, an uncle, like a distant relative, someone you know at work who's trying to start a side business. For me, it was helping someone at work launch a vegan takeaway. That was 7 years ago, 8 years ago. That was one of the first things I did, and that allowed me to have access to a Google Ads account and design software and trying to create a leaflet. And just having to properly produce things made me work out, oh, this is how you do it, or this is what works. If you don't know anyone like that, set something up for yourself. That can be a newsletter about your favorite thing. Are you really into a competitive video game? Just set up a newsletter about like talking about the newest developments in competitive play in that game, for example, and try and get people to sign up to it. And I know you can like, but I have to spend my own money, but tough shit. Every single second you spend doing this is effectively spending money, because it's money, it's time you could use earning money elsewhere. So give yourself $100 budget each month to be like, okay, this $100 isn't mine. These are for the marketing gods. This is a sacrifice, and I'm going to use it to learn how to do Google Ads. I'm going to use it to set up my own email software and play around in MailChimp, or don't play around in MailChimp. MailChimp's shit, but Klaviyo. That is what I would do for skill stacking to get to that next level of actually learning. And if you have to pick one, if you sat there behind the keyboard just saying, Alex, tell me what one to do, I would personally say marketing strategy, and generally how to put strategies and campaigns together, because businesses are never going to stop needing that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. For anyone who's taking notes, what I usually tell people is that there are 5 areas that you can stack in terms of skills: strategy, copywriting, media buying, design, and tech. Everything else kind of falls under those umbrellas. So strategy, copywriting, media buying, design, and tech. And if you break it out for yourself in that way, then I think it becomes a lot more approachable for you to ask yourself, like, okay, what do I want to learn? What parts of this do I want to learn? And become a little bit more efficient. Going over to Kaylee. So you started more on the design side, right? If I remember. Did you call yourself a designer, or what kind of term did you use for yourself when you were pitching?
It kind of changes client to client, to be honest. I don't really call myself anything. I was actually having a discussion with Sean about this the other day. I was like, what do I call myself? Anyways, go ahead.
Okay, so let's say you started more with a design background, and as you've progressed, you've stacked on these new skills. Can you walk us through your journey a little bit, and then explain at each step of the journey what kind of new opportunities that created for you?
Absolutely. So when I was younger, my design journey actually starts in middle school, high school. I taught myself all the programs. I didn't have the money for the Adobe program, so I torrented them all. Hey, Pirate Bay. And I just went on blogs and learned how to use the programs. So that's where I learned Photoshop. It's where I learned InDesign. It's where I learned Illustrator, the basics of it. And then I got myself an internship at a magazine at my stepmom's company that she was working for, and I did that for a summer. And then I kind of fell away from that after I graduated high school. I immediately started doing hair because I was hipster scene kid into the funky whatever and always a creative. So I went into that route, and I went to hair school immediately after high school. Graduated, did hair for several years. Was always kind of futzing with design in between that, and realized like, okay, I don't want to be behind the chair forever. So I decided to go back to school for marketing. I got a communications, design communications. And I was doing that for a while, and then COVID hit. And I realized like, oh, I'm already starting to get work through doing this. Why am I taking the time to still be in school? And so I left school because managing school and a kid and all that was just too much at once. And I just focused on the freelancing design stuff. And I got my start doing YouTube thumbnails because I was making the YouTube thumbnails for Copy That. And then through that, I was able to network in Film Booth. There's this guy, Ed, he has the channel Film Booth, and I joined the Thumbnail Academy, and I met a bunch of people through that, and through that got a lot of clients. And I just started doing YouTube thumbnails, which that was kind of my intro to copy, because there's copy in the titles and the thumbnails, which basically bullet copy. And then through that kind of forced me to learn more about copy. And I was always into the marketing realm. Like I would look at billboards and pass by them and go, oh, that's bad. And oh, that commercial got me. And I was always kind of trained to think in that sense. Like I would sit there and watch QVC as a pastime to see how people were selling stuff when I was a hairstylist because that was what I had to do. I had to like sell my services and upsell people and get them to buy product. And so through that and through the passion and like genuine, like actually genuinely loving what I was doing, that brought the work to me because I wasn't bullshitting about what I was doing. I fully was committed to the projects that I was working on. And through that, I've gotten most of my work through referrals. I've had to do very little outreach because I would work on one project and join a community. Well, I guess like I was doing outreach, but I didn't even realize I was doing it really, like going into Thumbnail University and meeting people through that. And then, reaching out to people in the Discord and building relationships and like, oh, I noticed your banner could be improved. And then like doing that for them or like reaching out to some of my old hair clients became design clients. Like I had reached out. I was at Artscape, which is an art festival, and one of my clients had a booth there, and they were asking me like, "Oh, what am I doing now?" I was like, "Oh, I'm actually doing graphic design now." And they were like, "Really? I need a new logo." And like that turned into a client. Like just that interaction turned into a client. So having those relationships built up and then building new skills and having trust built in with the relationships that I had brought work my way. And then really wanting to do better and then just being honest about where I was. Hey, I'm down to take a stab at this, even if I was like that in the hair world. Like, oh, someone wanted a hair technique. Okay, I've never done this before, but I'd be down to do it on you. And like, they had trusted me enough to know that I had built up skills in other areas that even if it wasn't perfect, it was not going to be completely trash, and just doing it. So yeah, I would just say like put yourself out there and there you go.
And Alex just said, listen to what Kaylee is saying, guys. I landed a client I met at Comic-Con. Opportunities are everywhere.
Yeah.
So everyone should really, really pay
Spot on.
attention. Yeah, that's what he sounded like in his head as he was typing that.
For me, I'm totally obsessive about what I do. And so it becomes a conversation with almost everybody. Friends, like when I was a hairstylist, like people knew, like I'm just gonna talk about it because I love it. And like when it comes to marketing and design and stuff, like I have friendships where like literally the conversations would be veering around ads we saw, or look at the font placement on that, or like I went to Creative South, for instance, and one of the things that I did when I was there to make myself memorable was I wore my brand colors every single day that I was there, which is like when I wasn't doing the copy that thing and I was doing my own thing, it was KMAC and my brand was like this lime green color. So everything I wore every day at that event, I was lime green and I stuck out like a sore thumb and that wasn't a bad thing. And then I went out and I just talked to the most relevant people there and then built relationships with some of the best designers in the world just for being myself. I didn't know anybody there. I went by myself and like some of the people that ran the event, they were going to get hot dogs and I was like, hey, can I come with? I love hot dogs. And we just had conversations about hot dogs. Like we didn't even talk about design. And then went to a restaurant and we were all just talking about the curtain. It became like really this thing where you show that you're genuinely into what it is that you're doing. Like if you show up and you're like, ugh, like if you don't like what you're doing, then it doesn't give you that spark. Whereas if you are clearly into what you're doing, then you'll be memorable. And so, yeah, like you have to build the opportunities too. Yes, I do agree that part of it is luck, but you can also put yourself in positions where you're you're increasing the chances of getting that luck. Like had I not gone to Creative South, I wouldn't have met those people. Had I not taken the time to learn more about what I was doing, I wouldn't have met those people. If you guys didn't actively show up in Reddit or Discord or the Copy That Collective or whatever, if you didn't put yourself out there, then nobody is going to have a chance to meet you. And if you were just to like give up right away and be like, oh, I got one bad interaction and okay, well, yeah, now you're shutting the door to any opportunity you possibly could have. But if you buck the fuck up and just keep going, even if you get negative feedback or critiques, if you're able to build through that, people will notice you. And the more that you put yourself out there, like in Aaron's case, the more he was remembered. It shows something because most people won't do that. And even being told this, most people won't do that. So that my spiel is over.
I love that. Thank you very much for the spiel.
I actually want to add to that too.
Yeah.
That's such great advice, and not just because it's important to show initiative, but also because just fundamentally in life, there are so many people in the world. No one will ever know that they should call on you if you don't raise your hand. And if you wait until the day that someone just happens to realize that there could be potential in you, you will be waiting your entire life. And so if you want something and it's important to you, you owe it to yourself to actually like take that step forward and put yourself in a position where someone could notice you or someone could say yes to you. Um, it is really, I know it's a really scary thing for a lot of people because the no that could potentially happen, can bruise your ego, but it is part of the job.
A lot of people, they won't talk about the work that they do and the great results that they have and like whatever campaigns they've worked on because they're like, oh, I don't want to come off as being like this arrogant, egotistical, whatever. But you kind of need to do that if you do it correctly in order for people to notice you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking a little bit back to when Sean was talking about how you might approach someone like a Mark Ford or someone who is, really high up there in a
Mhm.
setting like that. And I tend to think about most interactions I have in life that way. Like if I were talking to someone who would not be impressed, I would, how unafraid would I be to talk about the things I've done? So for example, if I were talking to my mom or a parent or like a family member or something, I might feel like I'm bragging a bit. If I was like, hey, yeah, actually, I've had a couple things this year that if you've watched TV, you've seen some of my work in the past year. But if I were talking to someone in the industry to whom that's like not a big deal, I'd be like, oh yeah, we did this, we did that, and here was the thing behind it. And there was actually this really cool unlock that I got to that was inspired because I saw this other person's thing. And if you think about it through the lens of like, what would I say if I knew this person wasn't going to think I was a dick for and bragging about it, you'll actually go deeper into the things that are truly impressive. I think there is a just personal growth development thing where, yes, it is good to not to be humble, but also, if you're being humble because you don't want attention on you, those are not the same things. It is okay to have attention on you. It's not okay to suck all of the air out of the room because you require constant validation. But like, yeah, don't be afraid to say what you've done. And if what you say is something that happens to get attention, then you've probably done something pretty decent, or just truly, truly awful. In which case, shame on you.
Fantastic. I just want to finish this off before we go into the Q&A, and we'll just do rapid fire Q&A for the last half hour. Um, can we talk a little bit about obsession? Because that's a conversation that comes up a lot. Everyone who you ask, I'm sure everyone in this chat has said this at some point. They're like, I want to be the top whatever in the world, right? Like, I want to be the best copywriter. I want to be top 1%. I don't want to be an S tier, but at least I want to be A plus tier. And people don't understand how much fucking work it takes to get to that level, right? Sean gets it. Alex gets it. Rod gets it. Kaylee gets it. Aaron gets it. We know what it's like to put in the 16-hour days, 7 days a week for years. And that sounds like hyperbole, and people don't believe it because they hear Iman or whoever, like, bro, just drop out of high school, work 2 hours a day, and you'll be a millionaire, right? So, so let's give people a little bit of a reality check and remind them what it actually takes to get to a level where they are respected in the industry, where they're making whatever the money is that they want to make, where they have the lifestyle that they want to have. That stuff doesn't come easily. So I'd like us to just go around the room and talk about how much work we put in, whether it was in the past if we're currently in a slow season, or the work that we're doing right now if we're actively involved in that.
I mean, to be honest, I don't really know how to answer this question. Kaylee, I think more than anybody here knows how hard I work and how much I work. Part of that is if you reach some level of competence, it takes almost as much work to maintain that level as it does to grow it. But in terms of, what it took, how long it took, the effort it took, I mean, like I remember, because I was writing sales copy and copy and content, and I had been doing it by the time I was ready to transition into writing like sales copy, long form direct response sales copy for financial publications. I had already been writing and getting paid to write for 15 years, 5 years. I was a professor of rhetoric for 6 years. And then I started trying to write financial copy and it was terrible. It was awful. I was humbled. I was literally an expert at writing. And I was literally being told how awful, stupid, and facile my writing was. And so I had to put in the work. And there were times where and this is like late 2017, I want to say, I would sleep under my desk at the office in Baltimore. At the time I was commuting, every single week between New York and Baltimore, a nice little 2.5 hour commute. And so I literally just sat, slept, shat, ate copywriting every single day as I was building a business. And this is, again, after I had already been paid, after I had already been bylined in financial publishing, after I had already been told by one of the better living copywriters of all time that he said, and I quote, "I know you're going to be a good copywriter, Sean, but I don't know if you're going to be a great one." And so, again, after all of that, literally more than a decade of experience, more than 5 years of teaching rhetoric and writing and persuasive writing, I still was humbled. I still had to put in 16 plus hour days into learning this stuff. Handwriting copy, studying the greats, breaking down copy, writing copy every single day, getting copy torn apart by mentors again and again for months. And only then was I able to write a really mediocre first sales letter. So anybody who's not, but again, like, if you just want to write a few, video ad scripts and like use AI to sort of help you do it, like the way to win at those is through volume, variety, diversification anyway. And so, you got to pump out a lot of stuff and you never know what angle is going to hit. So you don't need the level of concentrated skill development that I needed to do what I do. Most people can't hang in the world that I am. That's why there's only like 200 to 300 financial copywriters in the world working at any given time. And so, you have to choose and be judicious about the kinds of copy that you pick and the level of obsession that you have when it comes to this stuff, because you don't need to kill yourself to get into this work, to get this kind of work, to get to the level where you're making good money. To be the best in the world, you need to do everything that I did and even more. I'm not the best in the world. I don't even want to be the best in the world. I know that I'm in the top 1% in my little pocket. But most people, when they say, "Oh, I want to be the top 1% copywriter, I want to be the best copywriter in the world," like they don't realize like the best copywriter in the world in Rod's world is different from the best copywriter in the world in Alex's world, is different from the best copywriter in the world in my world. In my world, the level of obsession that you need to have is, most people don't want that life. And you don't need to have that life to have a good life.
You ever watch the movie Sean Whiplash?
Oh, yeah.
That's the one that I like to
Yes.
make. I tell people, like, go watch that. That is what it takes to become the best. You have to sacrifice every relationship you have. You have to sacrifice every hobby you have. And then, even then, what's the chance that you're going to make it to being the best? Like almost zero, right? So if that's the life you want your hands to bleed every day, that's what you got to do.
Yeah, in financial copy especially, it do be like that. But if you are just trying to learn how to write really good emails, for example, or really good video ad scripts for e-commerce brands, like you do need to be obsessive, but not to the extent that I was and still have to be obsessive. Like to be relevant in the financial marketing space it is a gargantuan task. Most people can't hang.
So I am really, really early on in my career. So what I want and what I truly want is something that I'm still trying to figure out. But I think what's the most important for people as they are moving into this career is that this needs to be something that they actually like and something that excites them and something that they want to learn more about and get better at. So whenever I am given an opportunity to do so, I will always be happy to learn more about this career and about this industry. Like, for instance, I've mostly done traditional copywriting stuff, but recently I was presented an opportunity to learn how to do YouTube marketing and script writing because I am interested in persuasion. When I heard that, I was like, that got me excited. Of course, I want to learn about it. And I think more important than anything is just having kind of a insatiable desire to learn more about copywriting and marketing. And I think that if you are in that frame of mind, I think you will probably be fine. And as for how long it took for me to get here and the things that I had to do, I was definitely rug pulled in the sense because I came in here when I started, I think it was like 15, 16. I was really young. Basically, what I'm trying to say is I was really stupid. So at the time, right, I saw all like the crazy promises of $10,000 social media marketing agency in 30 days. And I fell for a couple of grifty courses. But pretty much what ended up happening was I completely fell on my face. But I realized that this kind of online marketing persuasion thing was kind of interesting to me, and I wanted to learn more about it. And I significantly underestimated how difficult it would be. And I think what the hardest part for me was how long it took for me to see results and how everyone in my life, especially those around me, don't really understand what I'm doing. Like, I'll give you an example. I have my friends, right, are like very traditional kind of like bro people. So what I mean by that is like they'll make fun of you, they'll poke at you and stuff like that. So for the longest time, right, because this was something that like I let my friends know that I was doing, and pretty much for the span of 3 years, I basically got like no tangible results. Like I had a couple of small things that I could frame up as like, oh, I did this. But in reality, I would probably have made more money if I worked at the McDonald's across the street. So this thing that I was trying to get good at and I was trying to do for over 3 years pretty much got me nothing. I think my friends made fun of me. You guys should have seen some of the stuff they're saying. I felt horrible. Like they're needling me, and I think the worst part was the fact that my parents weren't very supportive either, because they wanted me to like go to college and become a doctor because they're Chinese and that's how they are. And when they found out that I was spending so much time doing this stuff instead of studying, my mom, she mocks me and she was like, it's like, oh, how much money did you make today? Or like, I'm not gonna get into it, but everyone in my life was telling me not to do it. But pretty much regardless of that, I found it personally interesting, and I think that's what got me to stick around for a long time. But 3 years without getting any results, working on this thing for maybe like between school and all my other responsibilities, probably like every free second I had, it was like 6-7 hours a day, and everyone in my life making fun of me kind of made me not feel that good. But eventually it's all worked out, and I got my first foot in the door, my first big success. And ever since then, it's been snowballing. But it definitely takes a lot of persistence. People aren't going to be understanding what you're doing. You're going to fail a lot. I failed a lot. You're going to embarrass yourself, and you're going to kind of feel like a loser for a very long time. But if you are willing to persist, and if you have a true passion for this industry, I think it'll work out for you just fine.
Raja asked, Alex, what should a creative strategy portfolio consist of if I'm starting from scratch and need to pitch clients? My answer in chat essentially said 5 scripts, each with 3 variants, and ideally a ton of hooks. What I mean by that is if you are pitching to a very specific business and you're saying, hey, I want to write scripts for you, I don't want to look at someone's portfolio who's just written like one script, ideally, unless they're pitching it as, hey, I wrote this very specific script I would love you to use. If in that case, okay, fine, let me have a look at this script that's written for my product. But if I'm looking at a portfolio and I want to see you've done stuff for similar brands, then I want to see at least some variation of 5 different scripts which are all relevant to my industry or niche or area. By variants, some people define variants purely as having like different hooks or different leads in the script, which means the first line is different. Sometimes the first couple of lines are different. When I talk about variants there, I'm talking about the same scripts, but done in different styles. So we're talking about, I don't know, let's say a pill to like help get your testosterone levels up. That's the most recent one that I've been copy chiefing. And this one talks about like not feeling good enough as a man. This one talks about like lack of muscle growth. This one talks about, whatever else. Those are like 3 different scripts. And then the ways that you have variants of those is in this one where you're talking about not feeling good enough as a man. The first one is from a point of view of a dude who's saying like, I don't feel good enough. It's, it just sucks. Another style is a doctor talking about why some men don't feel good enough isn't their fault. It's actually XYZ. And then another style might be a collection of reviews of people saying, I used to feel like this and now I feel brilliant. So one script, 3 different styles with, tweaks done. And then for each of those variants, I would want to see, between 3 and 10 different hooks, 1 or 2 lines at the start to grab someone's attention. And then for all of those, I want to see visual directions. It's no good being a copywriter in creative strategy, just writing copy anymore. You also need to give ideas for the video editors or, whoever's prompting AI to get you clips, what you actually want to see. If you're talking about struggling at the gym, you need to say, I want you to show some dude really struggling to like lift weights up. And I want it to zoom in and I want it to focus on like this part of his muscle or whatever. It has to back up your copy. Everything has to be pulling in the same direction. That's what I would want to see if I was reviewing someone's creative strategy portfolio.
Beautiful. Thank you. Sean McIntyre, how to be attractive as a copywriter?
Ask Kaylee, Jonathan, and Alex.
Do your hair every morning. I think that's where you start.
If we're just if Alvar would here, I would probably replace Jonathan with Alvar. I just had to pick on who I think are the 3 most attractive people on the panel.
Well,
sorry, Aaron. Sorry, Rod. But you know who I'm into.
I feel like the age gap is a little bit. The age gap is a little bit too big between you and Aaron for you to say anything about him like that.
Oh yeah, it's half my age plus 7 years. So what is it?
You just hired him and invited him to live near you as well. So it's good you didn't say that.
All right. I graduated college last year. I want to copyright in-house. What would be some spec pieces I should hit on? Landing pages, email sequences. I've seen the FAQ and the copy that Discord. Should I master those? It is a lot, but I just want to break into an in-house job so I can breathe financially, break into the industry, and grow from there.
This is what I would say. You're much better off creating spec pieces that are curated to wherever you're hiring than just having a boilerplate spec piece that you send out to everybody. Why? Well, because it shows that you are actually relevant to whichever agency you're going towards. So what I would say is actually research the person that you're trying to apply, or the place that you're actually trying to apply to, and then see the type of clients that they specialize in or bring on. And then I would tailor a spec piece to meet and match that standard, and then reach out to that with them. And even better is to pick a business that is actually in existence, that is real. So that way it looks real. But yeah, that's what I would say to that. Yeah.
Rod, do I need to study marketing to work in copywriting? I don't know about strategy and that sort of thing.
You do not need to, at least not to get started. But you can look at it a couple different ways. So one, the answer is just no. You can just study copywriting and then you can write copy. And over time, you will gain knowledge about marketing as you have results, as you work with businesses, as you hear about the results, and you kind of talk about the way in which you set things up to make your copy more effective. The other perspective is absolutely yes, because if you do not understand the funnel within which your copy sits, if you do not understand how the business you're working for is trying to actually get clients, if you don't understand the broader media environment in which your copy is competing against other copy, then it's gonna be a lot harder to be good at writing copy because you're just writing something in isolation. If I were to give advice to someone starting right now, I would say start with copy, see if you like writing copy. And if you do, then maybe take a step back after you get to a decent place with your portfolio and start thinking about or learning, read maybe one singular book on marketing strategy, and then keep writing copy. You will gain that knowledge over time, but if you go really deep into marketing strategy before you even know how to write copy, you're going to find yourself just working in marketing strategy and not working in writing copy.
I think that people really underestimate how you can frame things. And I think that one of the most powerful things about copywriting is that you can make ugly things very pretty. So what I mean by that is, if I was to say one thing, it's ways to use what you have and kind of make it dance. So let me give you an example, right? I've had a job interview sometime in the past where an interviewer was really displeased with the fact that I was a college student, right? Because it's like, if you are a college student, how are you supposed to have enough time to work for me? And then I spun that as a benefit because the job was related to TikTok marketing. I was like, actually, I will. I first addressed his objection was that I was going to have enough time. I forgot what I said, but I addressed it in some way, and then I spun up and I said, because I am, really young, I'm kind of in that target demographic, and I would have a better understanding of it than probably anyone else you'll hire. So that's an example. And as for outreaching, right? You don't have a portfolio, and you message someone. They're like, "Do you have any previous work?" Guess what? Go on Figma. Let's say it's like you're pitching them to do a website, right? Go on Figma, type in landing page templates. You make something, you send it to them. Any ways you can increase your cred also help. If you are, it really depends on who you are, but if you have good English and a good English accent, and what you really should do, and what a lot of people don't do enough, is to put your face on camera. Nowadays, there's so many scammers, so many scams, like so many grifters, and people are really cautious about their inbox. Like, they've stopped clicking links because they've heard all of the horror stories. And you have to keep in mind that when you send an outreach message to someone, they don't know who you are, and they're very skeptical. They were probably busy and in the frame of mind that they were doing something else, and they have every reason to close out of your email and delete your message. So you need to get them to trust you, and you need to get them to know that you're a real person. I think the easiest way to do that is to record them a video of you talking, so they can see your likeness, they can see your voice, and they can see that you're a real person.
Great answer. Sean McIntyre, this one's directed at you. I watched the mega course until Sean's practice video, but since each audience is different, how much time should one allocate on research, since different audiences might need different amount of time to get to know their desires, notions, and traits in 30 seconds? How do you answer that question?
I think that that's just overthinking. I think in the natural course of research, you're going to find out that a product or a service might appeal to one or two major demographics. And usually that's very easy to find just by looking at reviews of a product or service and seeing the types of people that have purchased it in the past. And then you can make some pretty broad inferences about what those people are like and whom you should be targeting your research into. But for the most part, I think people vastly overestimate the value of bucketing people too granularly. I think that once you find one or two types of people that would buy a product or service, what you'll tend to find is that there's often a lot of overlap between those two. And I only have 30 seconds, so I can't give a specific example. So tough.
Go ahead and give the specific example.
So in the practicing masterclass and the mega course that is being referenced in the Q&A that we received, there's another segment where I go into the difference between features, benefits, advantages, deeper benefits, and how those tie to desires, notions, beliefs about the world, identifications, characteristics, and of course, deeper pains, deeper desires, things like that. And the example that I use in that particular masterclass, which all of you can watch if you watch the 22-hour mega course, is the Iron Neck, one of the best novelty fitness products I think ever made. Second, maybe only to the Thigh Master. Now, the Thigh Master, you look at that and you look at the commercials for that and you look at the people who bought it and you immediately know exactly whom that was for. It was for women who were trying to make their thighs more fit. Very specific demographic. But with the Iron Neck, one of the things that we saw that was very interesting to the marketers of that product was that it was very appealing to people in the fitness area, people who wanted to strengthen their neck, people that were into boxing, but then also people that were playing a lot of video games. Now, these two different groups of people, you arrive at these different demographics by realizing what groups of people suffer from pain everywhere as a result of neck pain. Well, it's going to be boxers, people that constantly suffer the whiplash of getting socked in the face. And then there's also going to be video gamers, people that spend all their time sitting around looking like this. And then what your research should be into is not, how should I say, those groups individually, though that helps a little bit, but also understanding the sort of Venn diagram intersection of what those two people experience. Why those types of people got into boxing and fitness, why those types of people are really into video games and things like that. And what you'll find is that there's a lot more overlap than you previously anticipated. And for that reason, you'll often, if you go look up the ads for the Iron Neck in Facebook Ad Library or Google Transparency Center or YouTube, what you'll find is that there are different ads appealing to these different demographics, but one ad to one of their demographics would probably appeal to people with tech neck as well. And so that research, I think going a little too granular with it is probably just a mistake. And really, once you realize like the one or two groups of people that something would appeal to, do a little bit more research, but you don't have to go crazy with it.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I'll take this next question from Alex, not our Alex, but another one. I know this might be a bit too early, but is AI going to take over the copywriting space? / would you recommend using AI to write copy for clients? I know that Sean really doesn't like AI. He hates everything about it. But I think that this question is contextual because in the world that Sean works in, you can't write like a 10,000 word financial sales letter using AI, right? It's not going to produce a good output. You're not going to have something you can throw up. In my world where I'm doing, or I was doing a lot of biz op, now I'm doing like health coaching stuff. I can take AI output and it'll take me like 30 seconds to generate it. And then it'll take me 5 minutes to edit it. And I've got an ad script. And I can't remember if it was Sean or Alex earlier who was saying that in some spaces it's more a game of volume than perfection, right? In Sean's world, Sean needs to be as good as he can. In my world, I need to put out as much stuff as I can, right? So for me, and I think for both of us, because Aaron mentioned, Sean, that you use AI for research as well. AI really, really helps with the research process. It used to take me a week to do research on a new project, right? I would start with a client. I'm like, first 5 days, all I'm doing is reading Reddit threads. Now I can go into Perplexity, my favorite research AI. I'll go into Perplexity and I'll be like, these are the exact parameters I'm looking for. Give me this output, rank it by frequency of how much you see these pains mentioned, right? Like if you understand how a large language model works and how to use it, you can get really good research. And then depending on the tools that you're using and how you use them, you can get really good output as well. I think that this replaces the need for junior copywriters, right? Because I don't need 10 people to give me 10 people's worth of output. I could have just one Aaron and he could give me 10 people's worth of output, right? So I don't think that there's as much of a need for low-level copywriters anymore. I think that anyone who learns how to use these tools effectively will become a lot more hireable, I guess would be the right word. And then the people who know how to use these tools effectively for themselves, like me, I'm running all of the marketing for a business by myself because I can use AI to accelerate most of the process, right? So yes, it's taking jobs. Yes, you should become better at it. If you become good at it, it's not going to take your job. How do you improve if you don't get feedback because you're constantly being ghosted?
Before we go on, one of the things that I want to address is this seeming obsession among young people recently about reaching out on Instagram DMs. I think that that's been put out a lot by your Cardinal Masons, Tyson Ford D's, Tom Stoics kind of people of that generation. I was talking to Aaron and Adam about this and a few people on our Discord where it's like, the reason why that seems like a good idea is because these new copywriters themselves don't use email very frequently. But guess what? The actual real owners of businesses use email. They are not waiting around on Instagram for your crappy outreach. The people that you will get on Instagram are your coaches, your influencers, generally unserious people with unserious amounts of money. There are, of course, exceptions to that, but I think that most of the people who think that Instagram outreach is a good idea really need to think more carefully about where the people they're trying to work for live. It's in email or in like platforms like Upwork where they're trying to hire people.
I think I have sent thousands of Instagram DMs. I can count the number of clients I've gotten from it. and it's 0. In fact, I've gotten more views in any other type. I don't think I've ever had someone tell me "F you" over email, but over Instagram DMs, I've had so many people telling me to F off. But as Sean said, it's context dependent. If the business you're working for has like a channel on Instagram, right, and obviously they're trying to promote it, and if you sending them a message there would get their attention, use it. But Instagram outreach is so overhyped by the gurus. It's something that you use if you have to, not something that you should rely on.
Rod Satterwhite, how do you improve if you don't have anyone to give you feedback on your work? Like if you don't have a job, but you're trying to write spec pieces and stuff, how do you get better?
Do you need feedback to get better? Is the first question I would ask. Most people who are starting out, I think it feels hard because you're like, okay, I don't know if this is good. Is this shit? Is this not shit? You're writing stuff. It sounds like copy E, but is this like right? Um, Very baseline. I would just write stuff. Don't worry about whether or not it's good. If you are in your first 3 or so months of doing this, just because it's gonna be bad. Um, After that, start putting together a portfolio, reach out to people in communities like the CC or the Copy That server or r/copywriting, wherever. There are plenty of places online right now where people are willing to look at your copy and give you feedback for free. People are going to give you harsh feedback on the internet. That's just a reality, and you're going to have to learn to be okay with that. So like when that happens, don't be like, oh, these people must suck because they think I'm bad. No, you're probably bad, and that's okay. But just take their feedback with a grain of salt. But after a long period of doing that, I would just start applying for stuff, start reaching out to business owners, ask them to give you feedback on their portfolio. Ask people you know who are doing the types of jobs that you have or that you want to do to give you feedback. It can be other copywriters who can't hire you.
I've read your email about dimensionalization, Sean, and my question is, how do you dimensionalize a benefit without making it over-exaggerated to the point that it's unbelievable?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Dimensionalization, the whole point of dimensionalization is to make something not only more believable, but also more understandable. If you are, for example, talking about the power of a nuclear bomb, you can say that it used this many grams of fissile uranium. The power of the sun in the weight of a butterfly. That's an example of dimensionalization because it helps you focus an understanding of like, okay, we went from like a number, but now we have a greater context. And so dimensionalization, the point of it is not to add hype. It is to really focus down and make clear what you're saying, the benefit of something, the power of something, the amount of something, the historical context of something. And so as long as you, how should I say, do that judiciously with an aim towards adding to a reader's understanding of what you're writing, it won't be over exaggerated.
Beautiful. Question to Jonathan. Can someone not like copy and just do it for money? And is it a good skill to learn and still be successful? You can treat it like a job, but you're not going to get to the top if you treat it like a job. So if you just want to have a job as a copywriter, I know a lot of people like that. They're happy, they make money, they're fine. If you want to be a Sean McIntyre, an Aaron, a Rod, a Kaylee, an Alex, whoever else, find something that you love and just be obsessed with that.
I think behind that question really is like, I want to make money and not have to care. And I think what you will find with any job, but also anything in life, is that yes, you can do things without caring, but the ceiling on when you don't care is quite low. So like, yes, you can show up to your job as a copywriter and just like not really give a fucking punch in and punch out, but your stuff is going to be mediocre. And so the opportunities you have are going to be mediocre, and how much you pay is going to be mediocre, and your enjoyment and satisfaction from that is going to be mediocre. However, if you care a little bit, and it doesn't have to be care about being the best copywriter, it can be you can care about how well something works. You can care about what trends are happening, what types of creative are people using. There are so many different things you can care about. And to be quite honest, I think it's actually harder to not care about anything than it is to just like be curious and open and just care a little bit about something. But even caring a little bit will take you so much farther. And so I would invite you, rather than thinking about life or jobs or your careers as a means of just getting money, to open your eyes a little bit and, say, well, what would happen? What would I do if I did care? Because it's so much more fun.
This more pertains to younger people, but generally, since I started 3 or 4 years ago, I think I can count on one hand with half my fingers the number of people I know who started the same time I did and are still doing it. And I've met a lot of people. So, borrowing some Gen Z slang here, but NGMI, you're not going to make it if you don't care about copywriting and you're just in it for the money. I've watched so many people drop and quit this career. And nowadays it's gotten harder and harder to get into it if you don't like it. And if you don't care about it, you probably won't succeed.
How did Aaron actually start practicing copy before getting to Outreach?
You guys are very, very blessed and lucky because you have the 22-hour mega course. Back when I started, there was only the 5-hour mega course. So you guys are getting, what is that? 22 minus 5. You guys are getting 17 more hours of training than I am. So there's that.
Fantastic. And then we'll do this as the last question. If you're antisocial and horrible with human interaction, but still want to network, what advice would you give? Kaylee, I feel like you answered that one already. You want to just recap what your proper answer is?
Yeah, what I would say is fight through the feelings of discomfort. And if you're not sure what to talk about, I said it before, ask whoever you're in a conversation with questions about them and just force yourself to be uncomfortable. There you go.
Easy. Done. All right, let's wrap this up with a final piece of advice from everybody. Aaron, we'll start with you. Question will just be open. What's a final piece of advice you would give to everybody in the call?
This is a very top secret that I discovered by accident, and it doesn't just work in copywriting. It works in anything. I've done this in multiple spaces. When I didn't know how to do something, I just asked the person who's good at it, and it's like, how do you do it? So what I've come to realize now, because it's come full circle, and I'm telling you guys this at my detriment, is that when you ask questions of young professionals who are just starting to see success, you will get a disproportionate level of, how do I say, feedback from them. Because I've kind of noticed the psychology of it now, but when I was first starting, right, I reached out to a lot of the people in the CC and CT, and I just asked them, it's like, hey, I want to learn how to do the things you do. I want to be successful like you. What do I do? And they were willing, very eager to give me a lot of help and feedback. And now it's happening to me, and I'm finally understanding the psychology of it. And it's that people who are just starting to see success, and they're often young professionals or earlier in their career, they have really terrible imposter syndrome. I still have really terrible imposter syndrome. And I am very, very insecure about, even though I have a lot of success, I'm very, very insecure about my prospects and my skills. So when someone comes up to me and it's like, I had someone say this, but it's like, hey, I really, really want to be like you. You are exactly where I'm at right now. And I'm like, oh my God, it's a really good feeling. And if you are to do that, it doesn't matter if it's in copywriting, or I've done this in poker too. By accident, I was even trying to do it. People are very eager to help you.
Be okay being honest about where you are, and don't think that because you're inexperienced that you're going to get less of a chance of getting a job over somebody else. If you own who you are and you have drive and you have the willingness to show up, you can make it past the inexperience. So don't let that hold you back.
I'm actually gonna give the exact opposite advice of Aaron. So when you're seeking advice or when you're seeking guidance, try to reach out to people with a bit more experience, maybe people who are further along in their career, towards the end of their career or whatever. I think it's really great to reach out to people who are earlier on and are having success, have a lot more time. And I think there is definitely that, there's more eagerness on their end to kind of reach out and give that time to you. However, their sample size for what works on like a conceptual level is much, much smaller. And I think that's where a lot of like you should be like on Instagram DMs type of advice comes from. When you can talk to someone who has a little bit broader of a perspective on what works or how to go about having a career, the types of advice you're going to get are going to apply to much more than the thing that's trending right now. And that's not to say you shouldn't also reach out to people younger, especially if you want like a little bit more time or touch there, but definitely balance it out with like the broader perspective, more experienced people, because it's important to make sure that your priorities and your sense of like what's important in the long run is on point if you want this to be a long-term thing for you.
There is no secret or hack or step-by-step formula or magic action that you can do that's going to allow you to make money from this career. The other unfortunate thing that we have to add to that is that you can study, you can write, you can practice, and you can just be unfortunately one of those people that goes 2, 3, 5 years without ever getting a client or a job. And then at the same time, there's going to be some people who, learn this in a couple of weeks and then get 7 clients. The unfortunate reality of this business is that it's a market. Y'all are the product. Clients, businesses, they are looking to buy something, to buy time, to buy attention, to buy a skill for themselves. And just as there is a market for all sorts of products, and it's almost like, how should I say, a little bit of luck, serendipity. There's also a degree of capriciousness in people when they go about selecting the things that they want to buy. All this stuff is stuff that's outside of your control. And so one of the things that you have to sort of get right with, if you're early in this path, is that mindset, the grit that you're going to have, the fact that ultimately, at the end of the day, there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty here. Not only in terms of the question, when will I ever get my first client, but also how do I scale up to $10,000 a month and beyond? There's a tremendous amount of uncertainty there. But here's the good news. There's very little risk. I write a lot about stocks, and there's a decoherence between risk and certainty. You can be certain that something is going to go up, but it can be very, very risky or very not risky. Likewise with this business, it's very high in the uncertainty factor in terms of what you need to study, what niche you need to go in, the exact actions you need to do to get the exact job that's going to pay you $20,000 a month. Lots of uncertainty there. Nobody knows and nobody can give you an answer. And anybody who says that they can give you an answer is probably lying to you on the internet. But the cool thing about copywriting is that it's very low risk. Say, for example, you study copywriting for 2 years and you don't really see a lot of success. No matter what career you go into, engineering, medicine, retail management, for example, anything, you're going to have to be able to write, and you're going to have to be able to write persuasively. And so for that reason, copywriting is a supremely transferable skill. Copywriting, for example, in the chat, most of you have been seeing a woman named Paula popping up. She's been chatting. Guess what? She's not a copywriter. She's an accountant with her own accounting business. She learned copywriting from us so that she can help boost her sales and the amount of people that she brings into her accounting service. And guess what? It has worked for her. No matter what job you pursue in life, copywriting can be of help to you. So go about this skill with that in mind, that there is a high degree of uncertainty, but no matter what, there's a low level of risk, so long as you don't overspend on an overpriced bullshit course. And that is what I have to say.
Beautiful. Thank you. We'll wrap up. Thank you very much to everybody who attended. Thank you very much to the panelists. You guys were amazing. I apologize for any of the questions that we didn't get to. There were a lot, and there are some that would be very time-consuming to answer. But if you guys are not already in the Copywriting Collective Discord server, in the Copy That Discord server, you can jump into there. On Friday, I do office hours. I think that Aaron is also starting to do some kind of office hours.
Jonathan, somebody asked in the chat what your final words of advice would be for everybody starting this out.
That's a really great question. I think that the thing that I repeat the most to people is that you just have to really, really love this to the point where you're going to work at it until you be successful, or until you're going to be successful. Because like someone asked earlier, can you just treat it like a job? Yeah, for sure. You can fall into copywriting. You can do whatever you want. You can treat it like I'm working at the grocery store or wherever you're going to get a job instead. For me, I love this. I love every aspect of everything that I do, and that's what keeps me going. I feel bad to say this, but I would rather be sitting and writing copy than doing almost anything else. And why do I feel bad? Just because people make me feel like it's not normal, right? But I have arguments a lot with people where they're like, why don't you have any hobbies? And I'm like, I love my work. It is my hobby. And they're like, why don't you spend more time with your friends? I'm like, all my friends do the same work that I do. We talk about our work. Like, this is my life. This is all I want to do. I'm not upset. I don't hate it, right? Like, this is what I want. And this is my life. So if you can find that level of passion, like Kaylee was saying, right? If you can find that level of passion for the work that you're doing, then you know that this is the right thing for you. Then just gear everything in your life to be around this. I think it was Mark Ford who said this. I don't know if you got it from somewhere else, but work-life integration, right, Sean?
It's work-life harmony, and I learned
Oh,
that from
sorry,
Jeff
yeah.
Bezos.
Okay, cool. So Jeff Bezos, work-life harmony. Don't have your work and then your life, right? Bring them together. That way, everything that you do is always both of those things. In my relationship, I'm sure that Sean and Kaylee are the same way. My girlfriend's a copywriter, right? We can just sit on the couch next to each other, tapping our silly little keys on our silly little keyboards, writing our silly little emails. And we're spending time together, both of us working, doing the thing that we enjoy, talking to each other about it. Like we get it. Our worlds are the same, right? And that makes everything in my life so much easier because then I don't have to carve out girlfriend time. Of course, we go on dates, whatever. But if you can create a life around the stuff that you love, you're going to get so much better at it, so much more quickly. You're going to get the results. You're going to get the paycheck. You're going to get whatever comes with it. So that would be my advice for you. If you do love copywriting, make your life about copywriting, marketing, whatever. If you don't love it and you want to just treat it as a job, do minimum viable. I have no advice for you there because that's not who I am, right? I'm the other type of person. It's very possible you can be very happy doing it. Aaron told a story earlier about all of the haters in his life, including his mom. And and that sucks. And that's going to be the first 3, 4, 5 years of your career, maybe, right? Like none of us saw success at first. And people are going to put you down and people are going to shit talk and people are going to make you feel bad about it and you're going to want to give up. But if this is something that you really love and you're really willing to dedicate yourself to, just keep pushing. You have no choice but to succeed. The only way you can fail is if you give up. So that's my final word of advice. Thanks again to everybody who showed up. Thank you to our beautiful panelists.
Guys, thank you all very, very much. I'm going to end the webinar now. Aaron, Rod, Kaylee, Jonathan, thank you so much for joining me today. Alvar, Alex, if you catch the recording of this, thank you very much for joining as well and being guests on this. And most importantly, thank every single person in the chat who attended this. I really appreciate you, and I'm glad that you got to share some of your Sunday with us.